Welcome to the local campaign, and thank you for joining us for our debate today in Ottawa South. In just a moment, we're going to meet the 8 candidates who are here for this debate. I'll introduce them to you in just a few seconds. But first, let me explain how this debate is going to work. Each of the candidates will have an opening statement of 1 minute in length. We'll do those in an order that was drawn at random just before our telecast began. Following that, we'll get into a series of debates about the important issues in Ottawa South and across Canada in this federal election campaign. Each of the debate portions will be started with a question that I will direct to one of the candidates. That candidate will have 45 seconds to respond to the question on his own. Then we'll open it up to all the candidates for some debate and discussion on that topic. After that debate is over, we'll go back to the candidate to whom the question was originally directed, and that person will have 30 seconds to wrap up on that topic. We'll move through a number of different questions that way, and then we will have closing statements. We'll do those in the reverse order of the opening statements, and once again, they will be 1 minute in length. So let's introduce the candidates to you, seeking your vote in the riding of Ottawa South on Election Day, October the 21st. We begin with the Liberal candidate, David McGuinty. The Ndp candidate is Morgan Gay. Representing the Communist Party of Canada, Larry Wasslin. The Conservative candidate is Eli Tanis. From the People's Party of Canada, Rodrigo Andre Bolaños. From the Green Party, Les Schramm. There's an independent candidate running at Ottawa South, Sarmad Laith. And finally, another independent candidate, Ahmed Bouragba. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for being here for the debate. We'll start off with the opening statements, and we'll begin with David McGuinty, the Liberal candidate. You have 1 minute.
Well, thank you very much, Mark, and thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in to the debate to watch democracy in action here in Ottawa South. I'm running again because I believe profoundly in public service. I want to continue to build our community and build our incredible country. Over the last 15 years, I've had the privilege of serving thousands of families, helping small businesses, our seniors, individuals dealing with challenges, working with my provincial and municipal colleagues, working closely with our settlement and integration services, working with our community associations on infrastructure needs, our cooperative housing developments, our hospitals, our train station, our airport, and schools, and beyond. We've been working together to improve the quality of life in Ottawa South for all of the residents who live there. We live in one of the most unbelievable communities in the country. 82 languages are spoken now in Ottawa South, and we're almost 150 countries of origin. It'll be very important for us to stick together in the future and continue to build our wonderful community.
Okay, thank you. Next is the Ndp candidate, Morgan Gay. You have a minute as well. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, my name is Morgan Gay, and I'm the Ndp candidate here in Ottawa South. I've lived in Ottawa South for 13 years. I've been active in our community. I'm the secretary for our community association in Alta Vista. My wife teaches at Alta Vista Public School. My daughter goes to Canterbury High. I'm running in this election because I feel that things keep getting worse in Ottawa South. Herongate was the largest mass eviction in all of Canada last year. I keep meeting people who cannot afford the medications that they need. I meet parents and students who are shocked by the costs associated with tuition and education, and student debt keeps going up. Violent crime is on the rise in our community. With respect to climate change, tornadoes have become a regular occurrence during the summers. We had flooding in Elmvale Acres last year, and the Phoenix pay system is still not resolved after 5 years. The NDP has solutions to these problems, and the good news is the NDP won over 27% of the vote in this last election provincially. That means we can have a real debate about the issues. It doesn't just have to be about how we have to vote Liberal to stop the Conservatives. So I look forward to this debate. Thank you.
The Communist Party of Canada candidate is next, Larry Wasslin. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mark. Hello, everyone. My name is Larry Wasslin, and I'm your Communist Party candidate in Ottawa South. I acknowledge that this debate is taking place on unceded and unsurrendered Algonquin and Anishinaabe land. I have the privilege of working at the Children's Hospital and the Ottawa Hospital for many years as a registered nurse in the intensive care unit. I played a principal role in organizing the first union at CHEO and have been active in the peace and solidarity movements in Ottawa for many years. We all know that the big business parties, the Liberals and the Tories, look after their corporate friends. From pipelines to failed democratic reform to get out of jail free cards for their corporate friends, the Liberals have failed. Tory times are tough times. Imagine a combination of Doug Ford and Andrew Scheer. That would be a disaster. I'm here to offer an alternative vision, an agenda that puts people and nature before profit. I look forward to sharing my views with you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Eli Tanis, the Conservative candidate. Go ahead, you have 1 minute.
Thank you, Mark. My name's Eli Tanis. I'm the Ottawa South Conservative candidate for Ottawa South. My parents immigrated from Lebanon back in 1940, and Canada gave them a safe place to settle their family here in Ottawa. And they started the business of Tanis Food Distributors back then. My father and uncle passed away in the early 70s, and my mother, with her courage and commitment, kept the roof over the family's head and kept the business going. The company moved to the Ottawa South area in 1982, and the family and I grew the company from 30 employees to 150 employees, contributing to the economic growth of Ottawa South. We also founded a Tanis 21 Foundation, which represents the 21 grandchildren my mother had. We raised funds over those 25 years.
Okay, that's time. I'm sorry. Let's go next to the opening statement for the People's Party of Canada candidate Rodrigo André Bolaños. Go ahead.
Bonjour tout le monde, mon nom est Rodrigo André Bolaños. Buenos días, mi nombre es Rodrigo André Bolaños. My name is Rodrigo André Bolaños. I am the candidate for the People's Party of Canada in Ottawa South. I was born at the General Hospital to a man from El Salvador who met, married, and loved a French-Canadian woman, my mother. I grew up with my brother and sister in Ottawa South, namely Fairley neighborhoods, and with the culture of being humble, honest, and honorable, not nihilistic, hateful, or arrogant. In this world, it's difficult not to think the worst of it. And I, like the majority of Canadians, have been disenfranchised and disillusioned with politics and politicians for too long. I became a part of this nationwide grassroots movement to stand up against the corruption and the scandals and the loss of integrity that the established parties have clearly lost.
Okay, thank you. We'll go next to the Green Party candidate, Les Schramm. Go ahead, you have 1 minute.
Hi, I'm Les Schramm, your Green Party candidate. I've lived in the community of Ottawa South for 35 years. I have a wife, 3 children, and 6 grandchildren. I've worked in the social services and I've worked in the private sector. I've been chairman of the board of a mid-sized nonprofit organization, and I've been on the audit and finance committees of a publicly listed company. I believe that most, if not all, of every candidate in this debate has the competence and commitment to be a good MP, looking after our constituents, making sure they get the services that they need. But not every party has solutions that we need for effective climate action, job creation, health care, pharmacare, seniors care, children, and families. The Green Party will build an economy that creates well-paying jobs and lifts up the poor and the middle class. We will deliver comprehensive universal pharmacare and daycare. Our climate plan will ensure that our contribution to global warming and climate chaos stops. The Green Party is the only party with the vision and the policies that can make this happen.
Okay, thank you. Next is an independent candidate, Sarmad Laith. Go ahead, you have 1 minute.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sarmad Laith. I have 25 years of community works, and I served in the military. I was signals officer at the Canadian Forces, and now I have one of the biggest community center that provide over 40 services. I'm here. I'm very excited to be here this morning to show folks that in this federal election 2019, you really need a fresh voice. You can choose change for a better Canada. As we enter this campaign period, we have many issues that make Canadians stressed, tired, and hopeless. Canadians are hardworking people, and they deserve better, easier, enjoying life. We don't have to choose between bad and worse. We can actually have change for the best in our city and Canada as a whole. Just imagine a country where everyone can afford living and will be zero debt. We need to pay attention to our seniors, to our youth.
Okay, that's time. Thank you. And another independent candidate with the final opening statement for our debate in Ottawa South is Ahmed Bouragba. Go ahead.
Hi and bonjour tout le monde. My name is Ahmed Bouragba and I'm the teacher of your kids in Ottawa South, and probably you were one of my students. The reason why I'm running today is because I have a good reason to have my kids who are in the classroom see the reality. And my first goal is to restore democracy. Today we have corporocracy, and I want to reinforce, and I have to reform the broken justice system. And the last platform is to improve the living conditions of all the Canadians. Vote Buragba, and you will see democracy in real life. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to all the candidates for your opening statements. Again, we're going to move now to a series of debates about the important topics in Ottawa South and across the country in the 2019 federal election. I'll begin with a question to Liberal candidate David McGuinty. When you were running 4 years ago, you and your party made a specific promise about deficits. You broke that promise. Now deficits are going to be even larger going forward. How do you justify the broken promise, and can we really afford bigger deficits in the next 4 years?
Here's the really good news for viewers who are watching. Our debt to GDP ratio is falling, and falling quickly. That has become increasingly the standard measurement by which the G7 and OECD nations are measuring their well-being. In fact, we are number one in the G7 in terms of our economic performance yet again this year. We have shown clearly that by investing in our people, investing in our families, in our children, our seniors, our healthcare system, the things that we need as a floor to stand on and to do well on, with behind us, we've shown that we can actually grow and grow quickly. 1.1 million full-time jobs in the last 4 years have been created, the lowest unemployment in 49 years in the Ottawa-Carleton area. It's working, and we've shown it can.
All right, it's open to everyone now on this topic.
Well, let me say that, first of all, you've created a lot of jobs, but a lot of them haven't been very well paying. When you create jobs, you should be looking at how do you create well-paying, full-time jobs, and the Liberals have failed incredibly on that item. But also when you're looking at deficits, you should be looking at what is that deficit for? A deficit should be really all about making an investment in the country. And that investment should be measurable. That deficit should be also accountable, and we should be able to see that there's a positive return on investment. The Liberal deficit has no measures. It has no way to hold it accountable, and it's a scattergun approach. It's not focused. It could be focused, for example, on reducing global warming. It could be focused on really putting in comprehensive pharmacare, but it does none of those things. So I say, hey, yeah, you've got a deficit, but you run it badly.
On the issue of jobs, I'd have to agree with Les on that, and that's why the NDP has put forward a plan to move immediately to a $15 an hour minimum wage and increase that wage over the course of our first mandate to a livable wage. Also, what we never talk about when we talk about deficit and debts is the issue of revenue. There are $26 billion in unpaid taxes sitting in offshore accounts. We have by far and away the lowest corporate tax rate in all of the G7, and so what we need to do is start to collect taxes from the wealthy and from the large corporations. We have loopholes in our tax system. For example, Netflix and some of these other large corporations aren't paying their taxes. And so if we want to address this issue, and if we want to get to the real problem, which is the lack of services for people in our community, we need to actually begin to collect those taxes from the wealthy so we can have a fair and equitable system in Canada.
Deficits are a serious problem, but you really have to look at where this money is going. The Liberal Party has been spending billions of dollars on armaments and war preparation. This is money that does not need to be spent there. Canada has a horrific foreign policy of wasting that kind of money. That money should be directed at the needs that people have. Corporate taxes have been cut over and over and over again. The average annual income for a worker is about $51,000 a year. But in fact, in Ottawa South, many people are living on minimum wage and precarious work. So we need to increase these wages. $15 an hour is a place to start, but the Communist Party believes that a $20 an hour minimum wage is what will get people out of poverty. Thank you.
And how did the Liberals get to their deficit? They spent $4.5 billion to buy a pipeline. Why? In business, you need to lay the infrastructure and regulations so business can thrive. You don't go buy a pipeline for $4.5 billion. It's a total waste of taxpayers' money. Healthcare transfer payments are $37 billion a year to the provinces. The interest on our debt in a few years will be $37 billion. Conservative Party wants to spend more money on health care, not on reckless spending so we pay more interest. This needs to change.
The fact of the matter is that neither the Liberals or the Conservatives, the NDP, the Communists, or the Greens have an actual plan to balance the budget in 2 years. Andrew Scheer himself was going to balance the budget in 2 years, and now he says it's going to be 5, just in time for his next election. Now, the People's Party will balance the budget in 2 years. We will eliminate the deficit in the same amount of time. What we are going to be doing is we are going to be investing in Canada and Canadians. We're going to eliminate all foreign funding that isn't necessary, that isn't going towards humanitarian crises, natural disasters, especially in aiding our friends and other countries that do help us out with our treaties, with protection. One thing in particular is the energy crisis.
For 1 second, you said you're going to get rid of the deficit and balance the books all in 2 years. That seems to me pretty staggering, considering that we have such a large deficit.
We're spending tens of billions of dollars in foreign aid. That is absolutely needless.
Foreign aid is not the issue at all. The issue is the tax system is there to tax the greedy and not the people who tax the rich, and the poor are getting screwed here. So what we really need is to double the corporate tax rate. We need to increase the capital gains tax. I mean, these are handouts. These are handouts to the very rich. Of course, and the People's Party is a cousin of the Conservative Party. So of course they're going to go along this slash taxes on the corporations and balance the budget by slashing services.
I want to make sure other people have a chance to get in here. Go ahead.
But we have mismanagement and we lack of leadership, okay? Proper leadership, okay? So the government should be of people, not of people, okay? The government should put people's need before, the corporate greed. We need to stop this selfishness. We need to have better management so that we can cut or eliminate this deficit, okay? Not wasting money, not, having single or individual plans.
Okay.
Every time, and every government will always conquer and make more deficit. There's always deficit after deficit. There'll be no change. And the reason why, there is only one reason, because our politicians, they are not free. They work for corporations. They are not working for the people.
Excuse me. The Green Party has never had a corporate donation, never had a union donation, and we never will. So no, that's to say that
there's lots of waste. There's lots of waste.
So I just like to, if I may, I just like to say just in response to a couple of things. First off, on the issue of on the issue of tax, on the issue of healthcare, I'd point out that Conservatives made dramatic cuts to healthcare when they were in charge.
Thank
and
you.
With respect
we'll have to stop
expenditure,
there. We've got to stop there. Our time is up. I asked the question to David McGuinty, so you get the final 30 seconds.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. It's important for viewers to recognize that our small businesses are about 99% of the Canadian economy. Small businesses create 8 to 9 jobs out of 10 today. We've cut the small business tax from 11 to 9%, and it's working. The unemployment level in Ottawa South and across the National Capital Region is the lowest it's been in 49 years. We're growing quickly. We're very supportive of our small businesses. This is really good for our economy and very good for our public services.
Okay, thank you. Let's move to the next question now, which I'll address to Morgan Gay, the NDP candidate. As much as any specific issue, I think this election is about trust and leadership. So why should Canadians trust your leader to be the next Prime Minister of Canada?
well, I would say this. I think our leader has demonstrated great resilience and great leadership over the course of this election campaign so far. He has faced challenges, frankly, that no other leader of any other party has had to face in light of the fact of the discrimination and the racism that Jagmeet has been confronted with his entire life, but that has manifested itself a couple times now over the course of this election campaign. Jagmeet is somebody who has proven himself time and time again to be able to be an effective leader. In terms of Ottawa South, in terms of my activities in our community, I've been active with the Community Association, I've been active with the Billings Estate Historical Site Board, I've been active in many different capacities in our community, so that's why I'm looking for the opportunity to take those skills and serve Ottawa South
Okay,
with
let's
them.
open to everyone now on trust and leadership.
Okay, I would say certainly that Jagmeet is a great character. He's a wonderful person and certainly worthy of his leadership role in the NDP. But what they has not done, what your party has not done, is come forward with a platform that is fully costed. So what we're doing when we're talking about trust is, how do we trust somebody without a budget? How do we trust somebody without a costed platform? I can't see that. We have it, the Liberals have it, Conservatives don't have it. So I don't know how you can go about looking at voting for people who can't produce a platform and a fully costed budget.
There are a number of things in our platform. If I can respond to that, there are a great many things in our platform, Les, that have been costed out by the Parliamentary Budget Officer, including the 1% wealth tax that we want to apply to the wealthiest people that are worth $20 million a year, would pay a 1% wealth tax. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has said that will bring in $70 billion over 10 years in revenue. That's been costed by the Parliamentary Budget Officer.
Trust and leadership goes far beyond costed platforms. It goes to the point of, if you say you're going to do something, like you're going to bring in democratic reform, then you bring it in. If you argue that there's a climate crisis in Canada, you don't turn around and buy a pipeline. I mean, these are the crucial items about the actual failed leadership of Justin Trudeau. On the other hand, the Conservatives, I mean, they will argue for this or that boutique tax credit. But you know, and you have the example of Doug Ford to prove it every day, they will talk to you about cutting the budget, and then they slash your social services. So trust has to go beyond a few false promises. The Communist Party has always stood with the working class and has never, ever wavered from that commitment.
I'd like to pick up on what Morgan Gay was saying earlier. I think Mr. Singh is a very good person. I think the leaders of all of our respective parties are good people trying to do a very difficult job. I think it's important for us to remember it is helpful from time to time to remember that we represent collectively 37 million people, and I believe strongly in lowering a lot of the rhetoric in the House of Commons. I think it's important for us to go back to work post this election and perform more non-partisan work together to put Canadians' interests ahead of partisan interests. I think that can be done. I've certainly tried to do that in my own work as the chair of the National Security and Intelligence Committee for Canada. I think we're able to do that. I think that's the kind of bridge building that's required now. I think Canadians are telling me that, and Ottawa South residents are telling me that at every second or third door that I go to. So I think it's important for us to be respectful, to rebuild trust and confidence in our democratic system and our institutions, and to recognize that each one of the parties that are represented here today have a positive contribution to make, because ultimately it's about bettering Canada and bettering our community.
A leader, first thing, for the leader, he must be free and independent. You cannot be a leader if you are not independent. So democracy lies on the freedom and independence. I'm repeating this because it's very important. Since all our politicians, they work, so they are servants of corporations. They cannot lead. They cannot because they lack the freedom again. So first what we have to do is to encourage independent candidates. We have to restore democracy by moving from the corporations to the people. Today, the people, the Canadians and the ordinary Canadians are not leading. We have over 32 million Canadians, and we have poverty, and we have the second largest country in the world. So this is ridiculous.
When you talk about corporations, first of all, the NDP and the Communist Party and the Green Party certainly are not in the hands of corporations. When I go back to Morgan's comment on the line item expenses and income revenue that they've talked about, that does not make a budget. That is one thing here, one thing there, one thing here. How does it all fit together? I agree absolutely with David that we really need to start looking at things in a mature way, start collaborating, start talking. We need to set up a Council of Canadian Governments that would include the Aboriginal, the Indigenous population, the Métis, and all other levels of government. so that we can start to actually talk down as a cohesive group of people about all of the problems that affect municipalities, that affect provinces, affect everyone in this country. We need to collaborate more, but we need more mechanisms to be able to do it.
Mr. Singh, you need leadership. I come from a business background, and you need to lead by example. And at least Mr. Singh leads by example. In his campaign tour, he rents a plane and takes a bus. And Justin Trudeau and his entourage have 2 planes. Like, how do you preach? How do you tell people, well, we're going to tax you more to go drive your kids to the hockey game? We're going to tax you. How could you fly around with 2 corporate jets, burning fuel, causing emissions? You have to lead by example, and the Liberals do not lead by example.
The fact of the matter is that India is one of the fastest growing economies in this world right now, and they are a huge partner in our international relations. I've had the privilege and pleasure of making friends in different sectors, public and private, with Sikhs, Punjabis, Hindis, and the fact of the matter is that Mr. Singh, supporting Sikh extremism, will not be a great fit to conducting business in India or with India, and wouldn't even be able to set foot on Indian soil.
Okay, we're at time, but I'm going to give Sarmad Laith just 20 seconds to have your say, since you haven't spoken yet on this topic.
Yes, thank you. I think Mr. Trudeau, he's a good leader, and he needs good leaders to support him. Like Mr. David McGuinty, also he's a good leader, but we need another leaders, fresh leaders. So this is why I have my skills from the army to be a good leader, and I have something different to offer to the community. This is why I'm running the election.
Thank you. Let's move back to Morgan Gay. I asked you the question. You get the final 30 seconds here.
Well, I agree that trust is a real problem in this election. And unfortunately, what I hear on the doorsteps when I talk with people in our community is that they feel like their trust was broken with Mr. Trudeau. They were told in the last election that there would be reconciliation with First Nations, and yet all we hear about are Human Rights Commission complaints from the First Nations community, Indigenous communities challenging the government. We heard about the environment, the government bought pipelines. We were told there'd be electoral reform, it hasn't happened. And so there's a long list of broken promises, and so I do think we need to rebuild trust with elected folks in our community.
Thank you. Let's move to the next question now, which I will direct to the Communist Party candidate Larry Wasslin. I think a lot of Ottawa residents are concerned about rising levels of gun violence. What can be done to curtail that? And should cities be given more power to respond to this issue?
Gun violence is a serious problem. And the Communist Party position is that handguns and military assault weapons should be banned. So that's the beginning of it. But it is by no means the end of it. Many of the problems in terms that result in violence come from communities that are very poor, disadvantaged, and we really need to build up our social services. We need to build up the support for people that need the support, and it is by addressing and attacking the root causes of poverty that we will work our way out of violence. So absolutely ban the guns, but address the social issues as well.
So our campaign actually would agree with Larry on that, in the sense that our campaign in Ottawa South absolutely supports a ban on handguns in our community. And in fact, I was privileged enough to have Councillor Ralston King join our campaign last weekend to do canvassing. We've been very supportive of Councillor King's efforts on City Council to try and get a motion passed to ban handguns in our community. There's no question that we need to get at the root causes of violence, and all too often that happens because people are not getting the services that they need. But absolutely and unequivocally, our campaign supports a ban on handguns. Nobody should have a handgun in our community unless they're a law enforcement officer.
Our party's announced that we're going to be banning semi-assault rifles. These attack weapons are created for one reason only, and that is the theater of war. Unfortunately, the Conservative leader and the Conservative Party don't agree with this. We think that's problematic. We're going to work with our municipalities across the country to deal with a potential handgun ban. I'm really pleased and proud of the fact I was able to work with our Chief of Police and our Minister, Bill Blair, to secure an additional $55 million for the province of Ontario to deal with the guns and gangs challenge, and also to invest here with our police force on the ground with new vehicles, new officers, community outreach, and our Crown Prosecutor's Office. Because increasingly what we're hearing is many young people who make the wrong decision in terms of joining a gang ultimately want to get out, and it becomes very difficult. And our Crown prosecutors have received funding from our government to help work with them and their families so we can deal, as Morgan suggests, with some of these root causes and to be able to improve our overall community safety in Ottawa South, particularly, in that area around South
I'm very
Keys.
glad you brought up gangs. Do gangs buy handguns legally? No, they do not. They get them from the black market, and a handgun ban would only affect you, the legal gun owners. Starting a prohibition only increases the black market. We've seen that with alcohol when the United States had prohibition. We've had violence and crime since these days of Al Capone. Now, starting a ban is not going to reduce gun violence. It's not going to reduce crime. I know.
Hold on, you're wrong. Assault weapons are only...
What are assault weapons?
Rapid-fire, mass-killing devices. They are meant for theaters of war.
You can't legally buy those in Ottawa. You can't legally buy those in Canada.
There's not a problem with what's happening in Ottawa South. Ottawa South, in 2015, we have 6,000 crimes in Ottawa South, okay? When I spoke with the police officers, they said we are, I said, why you have bad service? He said, because we don't have enough budget. For God's sake, we have a $4 billion budget for Ottawa City, and we don't have money for the police to spend on. This is why what we have. We have domestic violence, we have crimes, we have killing. I was going to get killed twice in Walkley and Hetherington for the last 2-3 years. Why? Because we don't have enough public service. We don't have enough strong police officers. They are good, but they don't have a good budget for them.
The major problem here with gun violence is that the government always doesn't want to look at the reason why there is violence. We're not justifying violence, but the main reason of violence is the lack of social justice. When our youth, they don't know what to do and they have all the doors are closed before them, what happened? They are pushed by gangs or someone for the crimes. So as a society, we need to focus on the reason. When we improve the social justice, all those problems, they will disappear. We don't spend more money to hire more police because it will not help. What helps is more programs for the youth, we have to wake the people up and tell them that we need to focus on the right of the citizen and equal treatment. Once you have that, all those our kids, they will have less mental problems, they will have less problems, and they will not have time for those problems.
I agree with virtually everything he said, but we also have to, and part of the problem is that the social determinant of violence is poverty. So we have to address poverty. The Liberals, they are addressing poverty by having it trickle down from the middle class, because all of their cuts are designed for the middle class, and they occasionally lift some people out of poverty. But we still have almost 3 million people in Canada living in poverty, and as long as poverty exists, there will be a tendency and attraction to gangs. So we have to deal with that first.
So I would
Our
have
government
right,
has invested $86 million in the last several years to prevent cross-border smuggling of illegal firearms, particularly from the United States. We live up against a country which has more handguns in the United States than every other country in the world combined. We're moving forward now to make further investments in the Canadian Border Services Agency and the RCMP. The previous government cut $470 million from CBSA frontline border officers. This was a mistake. We have reinvested in the CBSA, and we're giving our officers, our good women and men on the front lines in both those forces, the CBSA and the RCMP, the resources they need to work with our community policing as well to be able to deal with this gun scourge. It is time now to get semi-assault rifles off the streets and to deal with our municipalities when it comes to handguns.
Criminals
I'm going to jump in because Eli Tanis hasn't had a turn yet, so go ahead, please.
Thank you. Ottawa South has the highest crime rate in Ottawa now, and we've had 15 years of Liberal representation. There are 3 million gun owners in Canada with 7 million guns. The RA Gun Club is in Ottawa South, and there's many members in the Alta Vista, responsible gun owners that go there. Banning handguns from them is not going to stop gun violence. 80% of illegal guns, 80% of illegal guns come from the
Time. Thank you. That's time, everyone. I asked the question to Larry Wasslin. We'll go back to you for the final 30 seconds.
There's no need for handguns or assault weapons in our communities, none whatsoever. So that's number one. Number two is you have to address the root cause of violence. and many people have agreed with the Communist Party on this. We need to attack the root cause, that's poverty. We need guaranteed annual income. We need real jobs. We need free post-secondary education that young people can go to school and not have mortgages. So if you want to address gun violence,
okay, that's time.
meet the social needs of the people.
Let's move now to a question to Eli Tanis, the Conservative Party candidate. All of the other parties favor more, the major parties favor more immediate and aggressive action on climate change. Do you consider the climate change situation to be an emergency, a crisis?
The climate change is real, and we have to be active to address it. Our plan is modeled more after investing in reducing climate emissions, not taxing Canadians to drive to work, heat their homes, or take their kids to soccer. That's not going to accomplish it. We want industries, the carbon tax, our carbon tax, the large industries have to invest into a green fund, and they will invest into initiatives. Even at our company, Tanis Foods, we invested lots of money to reduce our carbon emissions. Large industries should do it. To put the tax burden on individual Canadians is not right.
Well, that's
okay,
interesting
it's open, everyone.
In fact, the idea of pricing pollution is a conservative idea. Preston Manning has been fighting for a price on pollution for his entire political life. Brian Mulroney and Ronald Reagan came together and dealt with our acid rain challenge by putting a price on pollution. That's the first big step that we've actually accomplished together in Canada. We had the price on pollution already in many provinces, but we're moving forward now. It's time for us to deal with this responsibly through a series of measures. We're moving forward, for example, as a government, and we've invested in 1,200 public transit projects across Canada. We've helped install 1,000 electric vehicle power charging stations across Canada. We're doubling, tripling, in fact, the amount of nature we're setting aside for future generations. We've just announced we're going to cut corporate taxes, but only for those companies, by 50%, those companies that are producing technologies that are zero greenhouse gas emission technologies. Imagine what that will do for us as we go out to conquer the global market, because everybody is embroiled in a race right now. And the race is to become a cleaner, more efficient economy. And the marketplace in China alone is going to be over $1 trillion, in the next 5 years.
Here's the objective reality. CO2 levels have gone up under our current government. The Liberal government has purchased a pipeline, spent billions of our tax dollars to do so. If we are going to tackle the climate crisis, by the way, on the issue of the carbon tax, I'd also point out that some of the biggest polluters are exempted from the carbon tax. And so if we're going to deal with this climate crisis, we need it appropriately. We need to treat it for what it is, which is a climate crisis. We need to take those billions of dollars of subsidies of our tax dollars that go to the fossil fuel industry and plug that money into green technologies to create green jobs so that we can start to move forward and move towards things like free transit, electric transit. We need incentives to move towards zero emissions vehicles. There's all kinds of... The Liberals have been in charge for 4 years, and only now are they announcing a ban on single-use plastics. There's jurisdictions all over the world where those things are happening. Under an NDP government, we will move forward on all of these initiatives.
The major problem here, there is a misconception of the climate change. No doubt, we are all for the environment because the earth is where we live. But the problem is that the corporations, they want to take your money to invest in this project, but they ignore the majority of the Canadians. So they cannot. The Canadians, they cannot pay their hydro, they cannot pay their needs, and they want to take more money from them for the environment. The problem is that the big countries who are making the pollution are our neighbors, United States and other countries like China. So if those people, they don't participate, if we don't enforce that on the international level, then we are wasting our time. It's like you ask somebody, ask him to make the ocean sweet. So can you make the ocean sweet with your resource? You can't. So this is a global problem.
That's no reason why you shouldn't take some initiative and show some leadership. We are a top 10 emitter of greenhouse gases. And that's why we're committed to reducing them by 60% below 2005 levels by 2030 and getting to net zero by 2050.
People are going to freeze in their homes in the winter.
Actually, they
80
will not, because
you
renewable
cannot-
energy is cheaper
80
than fossil
megatons,
fuel energy.
80
It's not as
megatons,
efficient.
80
It's
megatons of
completely
greenhouse
not as
gases.
efficient.
It's cheaper.
Do you know?
80 megatons of greenhouse gases is emitted every year from the tar sands. If there was a vote across Canada today on closing the tar sands, that would pass overwhelmingly.
No, it wouldn't.
Yes, it would. Don't interrupt. We need to not only close
This
the
is a
tar
debate.
sands, we need to shut down those pipelines. We need to ban fracking. All right? And the boutique tax credits from these big parties will not do the trick. One of the things that the Communist Party is advocating is public ownership and democratic control of the natural resources. And once we have public ownership and democratic control, we can drastically reduce the pollution.
One of the things that scientists have been telling us now for many years is we need to work with nature. We need to work with nature because nature can help absorb, can help sequester a lot of carbon. This is going to be a big part of our plan going forward. That's why we announced that over the next 10 years, our plan is to have 2 billion additional trees planted across Canada, while setting aside more nature and protecting more ocean, coastal zones. This is going to be a big part of our ability, and it's going to make a big difference.
There's a couple people who haven't spoken yet. Sarmad Laith, go ahead.
By the way, I heard from my friend that from the G7 summit that Canada is the most polluted country among these countries. And why? We have a plan, good plan, maybe run by Mr. Trudeau, but nobody is helping to implement this plan. By the way, I'm an environmentalist. I studied a master degree in environment. So I know we are not doing anything towards the environmental pollution, which is causing our climate change and damaging our globe. We have global warming.
First
I'm
step
very
is to
happy to
educate
hear
people.
that the Liberal government is going to work with nature. The first thing that we can do to work with nature is leave the tar sands in the ground. That's the big step. 80 megatons a year. Planting trees while exploiting the tar sands is counterproductive.
And a carbon price or a carbon tax won't solve it.
Actually, it
That's
will.
the fact of the matter.
Actually,
It will
it
not
will.
solve it.
It's not
We've
the-
got
it's not the
the
entire
Chinese
solution,
who
but
are
it's
the
certainly a
highest
big piece of it.
polluters in the world right now. We've got volcanoes that spill out hundreds of thousands of megatons of carbon. We produce a
Okay,
fraction
we're
of
gonna
it.
Stop there.
That's
Thank you. I'll go
unrealistic.
back to Eli Tanis. I asked you the question, so you get the last 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Thank you. We have to keep things in. Climate's a global problem. Canada is 1.6% of the carbon emissions in the world. British Columbia has had a carbon tax for 8 years. And their carbon emissions went from 66.7 million tons to 66.4. So there's been no change. Ontario, through a conservative initiative, closed the coal plants in 2001, and initiated the other coal plants to be closed. And they have a 22% reduction.
That's time. Thank
and
you.
We'll meet the
That's
Paris
time.
Climate
Thank
Accord.
you. Let's move to the next question now, which I will direct to Rodrigo Andre Bolaños, the People's Party of Canada candidate. Is public transit a priority for your party, and would you support, would the federal government under you support funding for Phase 3 of light rail in Ottawa?
Transit in any province is a shared jurisdiction, mostly municipal. I, for one, am actually quite saddened with the LRT. Just like the Phoenix payroll system, it was rushed. It was rushed, and it's still producing a lot of problems for us, which is actually just more money that we're going to have to spend to fix it. And we're going to have to spend that money on the people who built these things in the first place. To me, that is absolutely ridiculous. We are going to put more focus on our people, especially myself. As the candidate for Ottawa South, you can believe that I will be for you, I will fight for you, and I will represent you to the best of my abilities.
Okay, it's open to everyone now on this
Transit
subject.
is a critical, vital tool for dealing with a great many different issues in our society. Whether it's the issue of the environment, because if we invest in transit, it gets people out of their cars. And if we can move towards electric transit, like they're doing in China and a lot of other jurisdictions, those are all things that we need to be doing. If there is an NDP government, we will invest a lot of money A couple billions dollars are set aside in our budget for us to be able to move towards a more accessible transit and greener transit all across Canada. You know, there are jurisdictions in Canada right now, for example, in downtown Calgary, they're looking at a free transit line. These are the kinds of things that we should be looking at, and we need to invest in it considerably as a government if we're going to take the environmental crisis seriously. Seniors also have a real problem. When I've been door knocking for months now, I hear a lot of seniors talk about challenges with respect to getting around and accessibility. The key to so many of those problems is making transit more affordable and more accessible, and these are a priority for the NDP government.
Which is why our government has invested in 1,200 transit projects in this country in the last 4 years. I was very, very, very pleased to work with the Ottawa Airport Authority, our train station, to expand Phase 2, in fact, to the airport, because the original design didn't contemplate going to the airport. It didn't contemplate going out the Trim Road. We're very supportive of seeing what the municipality has to say going forward. We've been partnering with the province and the municipality for the last 4 years. This is fundamentally important as we redesign our cities and become more sustainable going forward. Canada is urbanizing very quickly. This is a fact of the world right now, and we need to make sure that our quality of life and our ability to get around is actually enhanced. This will be a big, big part of our ability to reduce greenhouse gases going forward.
And yet transit fares are going up in Ottawa.
One part of the question that has not been specifically answered. We will certainly support funding of the LRT3. We know municipalities don't have enough money, and we will be investing more money into providing more money to municipalities. We need a better transit system. We need it to reduce congestion. We need it to improve ridership, so poor people or working poor people can afford to get to work easily and efficiently. So we need not just more electric buses, we need more buses entirely. So the Green Party will fund that.
A few years ago, it took people about 15 minutes to get to work. Now it takes more than an hour. So all what my friend said, my friend David, is good, but it's not enough. Ottawa is the capital. Ottawa is the capital of Canada, and people they cannot get on time to their work.
You have to be realistic. Now, Canada, Ottawa is booming, so we have to give chance to the municipality, to improve themselves. We cannot every single point we can attack them. We have to give them some chance, to improve themselves, to improve the transit, the public transportation. Yes, there are some shortcomings, but we need to support them. We need to help them by good ideas, coming up with good plans, good concrete solutions, alternatives, but not just tackling or attacking every single thing they're doing. They're doing a good job, but we need them to improve, because now Ottawa is, this is what they're saying, is going to be 2 million by 2020 or 2022. So now we are 1 million population. And we are growing. So obviously the transit is a problem now, and we need to improve it.
I've been born all my life. I've been in Ottawa all my life. And now we hit 1 million people, which is exciting. And my congratulations to Jim Watson and the team that brought light rail to Ottawa. It's a great system. And it falls into place with the Conservative climate plan. We want to invest into green infrastructures and transportation like the LRT. We're introducing the green tax credit for public transit. So a household of 4 will get up to $1,000 back to take public transit. We want to encourage it. Unlike the Liberals' plan, they want to give you $2,000 to go camping and canoeing. Like, how many people are going to camp and canoe in the dead of winter?
Public transit is a critical issue. And we must invest in Phase 3. The Communist Party is fully committed to large-scale investment in public transit. We are also committed to public ownership and democratic control of some of our major manufacturing, so that we could make more mass transit buses and trains, and a Canadian car, which would be electric. So attacking the cost of transportation by making transportation as least expensive as possible, free for seniors and free for others, would be a big step forward in making life better for the average person in Ottawa South.
I agree.
Okay, why don't we stop there? We'll go back to Rodrigo Andre Bolaños. I directed the question to you, so you get the final 30 seconds.
I'm going to get on as many committees as possible to not only fix the light rail system, but also get the gears going with the Alta Vista Corridor project. Get a new highway built in Ottawa. If we're going to get to 2 million people by 2022, we're going to need another highway. What we're going to do is we're going to invest in green technologies, but in the private sector. Right now, photovoltaic cells and green energy does not come up to par with oil and gas right now, and it's sad.
Okay, we are finished the debate portion of our telecast. We're going to move to the closing statements now, and we're going to do those in the opposite order of the opening statements. So we will begin with Ahmed Bouragba. You have 1 minute. Go ahead.
Again, dear Canadian citizen, from north to south, from coast to coast, please get involved in politics. Don't let the corporations control your life. They are looking only for their own interest. Today, our parliament, our justice system, our politicians, they're all serving the corporations. No one can shake this. No one can correct this. So please, come out. I will be there for you. I will fight to the last drop of my blood for you in order to recuperate, in order to bring democracy back to its track, in order that you govern, you control your interest. Thank you so much, and see you on October 21st. Please do vote. Get involved. Get involved. It's not too late. Please do it.
Okay, thank you. Another independent candidate, Sarmad Laith, is next. Go ahead.
Yes, we need, Canadians need change, big change, a new, fresh start. We need, you don't have to choose between the 3 or 4 political parties who continue to do the old policies. You need a new policies, a new thing, a new Canada, better Canada. We need a government of people that cares of people and put people before anything, before corporate greed. We need to stop the selfishness. We need to also to help our youth, free education. We need also good, better like healthcare. Stop the long line and long waiting at the hospitals. We need good roads, better public transit. We need also to improve our public health, our also public service, the police, the...
Okay, that's time. Thank you. Next up is the Green Party candidate, Les Schramm. Go ahead.
Let me summarize our case. The Green Party is the only party with a climate action plan that will work. The Liberal plan, frankly, makes me want to cry. Take one step forward, take another step back, and you end up nowhere. We are the only party with a comprehensive universal pharmacare and daycare. We are the only the Green Party and the Liberal Party have released complete, fully costed platforms. We will achieve a balanced budget in 5 years. They will be somewhere past 2040. And the Green Party budget is actually very fiscally responsible because it looks at things in terms of how we're investing, what we invest in, and how we get a return on investment. Our climate action plan actually will reduce costs for consumers, so any tax increases that we would ever implement would be offset by that. Our budget allows us to create over 400,000 jobs, make life more affordable, ensure everyone gets the health care they need, and stops our runaway greenhouse gas emissions. Vote Green for a practical plan to make Canada better.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Rodrigo Andre Bolaños, who is representing the People's Party of Canada. Go ahead, you have 1 minute.
The People's Party of Canada was built on, promotes, and fights for individual freedom, personal responsibility, fairness, and respect. Not only for every Canadian citizen, student, and entrepreneur, but also for how the government should act towards these citizens, towards these Canadians. We are about less government and less government meddling. We are about all individuals, not classes or special interest groups. I urge Canadians to vote not with panic or fear or against the leader you don't want, but to vote for a leader and a party that truly aligns with your values. Check us out at thepeoplespartyofcanada.ca. Look at our policies and our platforms. Our national anthem says, "With glowing hearts, we see thee rise, the true north strong and free." When you vote for the PPC, you vote with a glowing heart. You vote to see Canada rise. You vote to see Canada strong and free. You vote for a party, a leader, and an MP that truly stands on guard for thee. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Our next closing statement is from the Conservative candidate, Eli Tanis. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mark, for having us here. My team and I have knocked on over 40,000 doors by the time the election is called, the vote happens. Personally, I've done 20,000 doors. Yesterday, I was in a townhouse development. I know, Morgan, you were there. I've seen the flyer. And a resident told me, I've been here for 15 years and never saw a candidate. And in 2 weeks, I saw Morgan Gay and Eli Tanis. Next resident I go to, the lady's telling me, she's talking about a child with disabilities and how is she going to get by. And she starts crying at the door. And it just like, I was going to cry, but I wanted to hug her, but I didn't know if that was politically correct. So I want to represent that lady. I want to represent seniors. I want to represent households that are just trying to get by. I want to represent small business. On October 21st, vote for Eli Tanis.
Okay, thank you. Now we're going to hear from Larry Wasslin from the Communist Party of Canada.
Once again, you have heard an avalanche of false promises from the big business parties. Together, the Liberals and Tories have controlled Parliament, and who has benefited? The ruling class and their corporations. This is a critical election. After 4 decades of austerity, declining real wages and living standards, the substitution of part-time and precarious work for permanent real jobs with benefits, and an ever-worsening climate change, working people have had more than enough. The election of the strong, progressive bloc, including communists, can stop the drive to the right in Canada. Communists, working together with labour and people's movements, can win a people's agenda that puts people and nature before profit. On October 21st, put people's needs before corporate greed. Vote for your agenda. Vote communist. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up is the NDP candidate, Morgan Gay.
So thanks, Mark. Like Eli, I too have been door knocking now for quite some time, for 6 months since I was nominated. And there is a lot of frustration and disillusionment in our community. I hear it day in and day out. People are not getting, in so many cases, their basic needs met, whether it's housing, whether it's getting paid appropriately because of Phoenix, whether it's they can't afford the medications that they need, whether it's tuition costs. Everything keeps getting more expensive. And life keeps getting more difficult for so many people. And in fact, with respect to some of the discussion we had today, it's interesting to note that Ottawa South is in the top 3 ridings in Ontario for food bank use. So we have a lot of serious problems in our community. The NDP has solutions to those problems. And the CCF and the NDP, our party, has always led on those issues in Canada. We are on the move in Ottawa South. We have never had this many volunteers. We've never raised this much money. So I ask for your support on October 21st. Vote NDP, vote Morgan Gay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Finally, the closing statement from Liberal candidate David McGuinty.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching this debate, and thank you to Rogers for organizing it. I am asking for your support so I can continue to go back to work and work for you. I've been focusing now for 15 years on climate change, environmental issues. As an environmental lawyer, I'll continue driving that for the government and for Parliament. I think it's important for us to go back and invest in our seniors, strengthen our pensions, invest in our infrastructure, build more affordable housing, support our co-ops, make sure nobody gets left behind, help families with childcare and before and after school care, make sure that our healthcare system and our transfers to the provinces have real measurable outcomes attached to the support, address community safety concerns, ban assault rifles. It's a great privilege to serve the constituents of Ottawa South. We're moving forward. I am for moving forward. And I'm asking for your support to be able to do so. I'd be honored to have your support on Election Day. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. And thank you to all the candidates for participating in our debate today. Best of luck throughout the rest of the campaign. I want to remind our viewers that Election Day is October the 21st. You will also be able to vote in advance polls that are taking place over the Thanksgiving weekend. So be mindful of that if you want to vote in advance and aren't able to vote on October 21st. Rogers TV and 1310 News will have live coverage of the election results, both locally and nationally, starting at 9 o'clock on October the 21st. I hope you can join us then. Thank you for watching.